Hi everyone, and welcome to the Satellite of Love. I'm Michael Nelson, and with me is Tom Servo and Crow T Robot, of course. Oh wait, sorry. I momentarily forgot who and where I am. So this is actually the Foundry Roundtable, episode 147.
That's good, because I was thinking about it. I don't think I could do a Tom Servo or a Crow T Robot impression.
What about
Gypsy? We're not great at impressions here. The voices you're hearing, of course, are myself, Dragoon1701, Markhawkman, Greendragoon, and DuncanIdaho. And welcome back one of our frequent guests and, in fact, our biggest fan, Pax Federak.
Greetings, everyone.
Yay. Howdy-o.
Well, let's see what to talk about tonight.
Good question.
We were supposed to have some news, which is that the Foundry was reactivated on Tribble, which was in the patch notes. However, when you actually load it up, it is not available. So we cannot do any testing of the lighting system, which, of course, we're very eager to do. Because I have the idea that it might kind of change a lot about how we build missions, because lighting is very important. You want people to be able to see your maps in the way you want them to be seen. So that will definitely be something that we want to look at. However, it is not available.
There is a small footnote in this week's patch notes that they changed a few costume things they're fixes to make it so you can put the right rank pips on certain costumes.
Mm-hmm.
So that will probably affect the Foundry in some way.
I believe most of those are like the Mirror Universe costumes, right?
Hold on, let me double check.
Yeah, I'm checking over this now. There's a couple of Terran Universe ones. And
Timeline, Jupiter Veteran.
Yeah, so it pretty innocuous. So nothing that's really going to affect people's ability to make missions so much. So this week's
really look at the rank pips on a character anyway when you're in the Foundry.
Surprisingly a lot, depending on which faction you're working with.
But as we know, costume fixes and changes often filter their way down to the Foundry. So if you were having trouble putting a rank insignia on a particular uniform, you may be able to after this next patch. Otherwise, not a whole lot of news, other than we got a date for the next big update, which is going to be called Artifacts, and it is coming out on, what is that date? The 25th?
25th.
Tuesday the 25th. So, that'll be good. We're getting new fleet holding, K-13. I believe I mentioned some of this on our last episode, but we're getting K-13, and then, help me out, what else is coming with that patch?
Kit revamp.
Right, kit revamp. Which I'm not entirely sure I understand.
Basically, there's no more sort of, for all professions, there's always been sort of two sides to it. So you have like mechanic and engineering, or tactical and strategic. And certain modules could only be put into certain sort of designated slots. So kit, like when you had an actual kit frame, it had certain amount of strategic slots, certain amount of tactical slots, for example, for a tactical officer. And you can only sort of put so many in there. So you couldn't do, say, 5 of one type. The best I think you could do is like 4 in one, depending on the kit frame. Kit frames are now just a sort of static boost item. They don't affect what modules you can place. So the big thing while leveling is that players will be able to use all 5 kit module slots right away. So you used to ramp up between 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it's all 5. And you're no longer restricted when it comes to your own profession, what type of module you use. So you can use lunge, battle strategy, all those guys for your profession, regardless of where they fell before on that sort of sub-specialization thing. And then specialization and universal modules are just sort of as is. But the big thing is removing that distinction and making tactical kit frames just more of a boost item rather than something that affects what modules you can use.
Interesting.
I can think of one small downside to this. and that is that you cannot use kit frames to store modules now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So watch out. You definitely, I'd say before the patch goes live.
So if you are hoarding modules, stop.
You got to, stop doing that. And you also just might want to just unequip everything, because I'm not 100% sure right now with what I saw. Because what I saw in Tribble was that my inventory space in my bank didn't massively implode, even though I was storing a couple modules in there. So I may have lost this stuff that's equipped. So just to double check, they're probably going to work something out. But just to be sure, remove things now and sort out your space. You got a little time before the new season, but you don't want to be crying like, I lost so much stuff. No, you can prepare now, because you will ultimately have to make decisions about what you keep.
The one character I checked on Tribble, her kit frame was replaced with a black square that does absolutely nothing, and her kit modules all got dumped into her inventory.
That's when it's equipped, and for that black frame, it basically means they haven't made the replacement item yet. That will not be a problem on the shipping version, assuming they catch everything. So that's what they started with when they first did the revamp, and now if you copy a new character, that same character again, he or she may have her kit module. So it's just something that just comes in the fact that they're doing this item replacement, and they haven't done that one-to-one quite yet.
I'm sure we'll get at least a couple more iterations of the Tribble server before everything goes live.
Yeah, I think one of the nice things is that they've definitely given themselves quite a lot of lead time for testing and whatnot. Because we've already had the lighting system on Tribble for weeks now, and we've already got most of the month of October before they'll try and push this live, so kudos to Cryptic for thorough testing.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of the reason why we've had the new lighting on Tribble for so long is that the version they initially dumped on Tribble wasn't complete. Because remember how they had to go back and tinker with all the maps to adjust the light sources to work properly with the new lighting?
And there's also a bigger question now, too, of hardware compatibility. Since on the consoles you only have one platform to worry about, now we've just got every possible combination of features. And it's useful to sort of put it out there now, because if it turns out, hey, things are exploding on a certain part of the user base, then they can actually do something about it.
Now, one thing I noticed in the latest Tribble patch is they fixed that issue where trying to go down to DirectX 9 would crash on you.
Yes.
I know that we encountered that when we were testing it one night, as I recall.
Which means Mark can get on Tribble now, too.
Yeah.
Well,
have an issue
actually got a new computer that's DirectX 11 compatible anyways.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, you're definitely going to want something that's DirectX 11 compatible, because I know I've seen some people criticizing the new lighting system on the forums and things like that, but I think it looks fantastic.
There is a new option that I noticed when I had last checked Tribble. There is, for all the new settings, there's now just a toggle for lighting 2.0. So you don't have to sort of go down on the settings to sort of try to sort of tweak your way to removing the new lighting effects. There is now a single option for it.
That's good.
So Luddites will be happy.
I will say that I've tested a few times over the last few weeks, and I have already noticed a few places where the lighting was just like horrible before and unbalanced, and I have seen that they've since gone through and rebalanced the lighting, and so it's much better now.
Lighting rebalance, huh? So is it viable in PvP?
Only if you can find a way to PvP and PvE missions. What lies beneath is actually
that's a little game design joke.
What lies beneath is my go-to test mission for these sort of graphics things, and it looks pretty gorgeous right now.
Mm-hmm. From what I understand, Alpha is going to look pretty good when you go down to the jungle planet.
Nice.
So can't wait to see it. It's going to give me some incentive to go back and play missions that I've not played in a long time.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I've been working in the Foundry this week, and there's been several
Hey, that's a good
instances
segue. So, Dragoon, tell us what you've been working on in the Foundry.
I've been seeing several instances where I've been like trying to kind of do my own lighting balance on several of the maps I've built, and kind of just trying to leverage back and forth. Like, oh, if I build this map in an outdoor map, then I can take advantage of this background. But then if I go interior map on this map, then I can do this background, and just kind of leveraging all of that back and forth. So, I mean, I've got instances
And
where
that may change in 2 weeks.
yeah, I know. And it's been on my mind a lot.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that one too, and it's like, I just hope that the Utopia Polynesia background doesn't become inviolable, because then it's like, oh crap, what am I going to do with
That messes up half your maps.
yeah, at least like half of AEI, because it's like, okay, there goes Apex, it goes Eons, dang.
Yeah.
So that'll be a recommendation once the Foundry presumably comes back online, since we assume there's going to be a little bit of downtime. But once we get the new lighting engine on the Foundry, playtest your missions, make sure things are still working, and also just make sure that the lighting still works for that content.
Because we have basically sort of like 3 questions, I suppose. You know, it's like, what are the backdrops going to do differently than they did before? What objects are going to be emitting light now that weren't before? And I had a third thing. Oh yeah, what are the stock maps going to look like now?
Well, I mean, hopefully some of the lighting balancing that they're doing applies to objects themselves. And as we've seen in the past, that tends to transition or kind of trickle down into the Foundry, since we kind of share the same references to the same objects.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that we're all going to have to go through and playtest our missions and see just how this all affects, because there's no way that we're going to be able to predict how it'll react.
Yeah, the one thing I did check out was Rise's old map, since we do have that in the Foundry, and it's kind of equivalent to a basic base map. So it's just got that one lighting source from the skybox, and then it's just that standard ground map, not a whole lot of interactions. It does look a little different because of the coloration, but the mechanics on the shadowing were the same. So it's going to look a little different, but I don't anticipate on the outdoor map sort of how that lighting works. I don't think there's going to be anything too radical, but we do have on like more of the standard type of backdrops, but then we got a few like Ruerpente, which also have additional effects too.
Yeah.
So that might change things considerably. And also, when you're looking at a night map, the lighting is a little bit more important, because you're sort of playing it a little bit more closely with how the darkness works. Is it too dark? Is it too light? Like Napoleon Night is definitely going to be one to keep an eye out on if you ever use that one, because it's really dark right now. And if they change things a little bit on that one, it could mean that certain sections might become unplayable or completely lose their sort of your character that you're trying to go for that section.
Yeah.
Well, I for one can't wait to see what my Burning Risa map looks like and the new lighting.
Or how it reacts with
also,
bloom and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I wonder how badly this is going to affect sky castles, especially ones that don't have a whole lot of ceiling lights.
Like those stuff in Apex. Especially when you're...
One of the things that they said was that I think objects can have more lights now. You know, it used to be the limit was 2.
That's pretty consistent with what I saw. I mean, like I said, I tested What Lies Beneath, which is, of course, that mission where you go down to the lower levels of Drozana, and it's all very dark, and you're carrying on the flashlight. Now, I happen to know, because I messed around a lot with this way back when it first came out, that you pretty much needed all 5 lights that the engine would allow in order to see the flashlight properly. There was a lot of projection and directional lighting that it used to kind of achieve the effect, and that's why it kind of looked... The flashlight wouldn't work for people who had fewer lights enabled. Going into the mission now on Tribble, not only does your captain have a light that works great, no questions asked, your entire bridge crew also has lights over their shoulders now. And all of their lights are going around as they run around. There's lights coming off of everything that you can think of. So there's if there's a spark, if there's a plasma fire, if you throw a plasma grenade, light starts emitting from that, and you'll see a green glow from the plasma fire. It's just like, I mean, I don't think I could honestly have counted all the light sources that were interacting, and the engine didn't even flinch.
Yeah.
So
and
does
weapons-
that also apply to, like, say, like firing a full auto rifle?
Yes. We tested that on the console, and my full auto rifle that I was using in our playthrough was actually a light source, and each bolt was that you could basically use it as a flashlight.
Yeah, I mean,
By shooting a lot, but yeah.
the eyepiece on my Liberated Borg was a light source. So, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like if it has a glow effect on it, it's emitting light.
Wait,
So you might.
which makes me wonder if that energy armor visual that you have as a costume option would act as a light source.
I don't know.
When you think about it, when you're designing a character in the Foundry to be an NPC, and you put a Borg eyepiece on them, that could be a light source now.
I was gonna say you can start trying to illuminate eyepieces.
Like that great shot in First Contact, where the Starfleet officers open up a room, go into a dark room, and then suddenly all the eyepieces start lighting up.
Yeah.
How cool would that be?
Yeah, that was a really well done shot.
It was.
Something to keep in mind, though,
what's-
is that not everyone will obviously have access to the new lighting, and so as Foundry
Yeah.
authors, it's something we'll need to plan for.
Well, one thing that just occurred to me is that logically, Borg would have, you know, like extra whatever sensor, so they wouldn't necessarily need a flashlight.
No, they wouldn't need visible light particularly. Anyway, let's move on to what we've been working on, because as Dragoon mentioned, he actually has been working.
So yes, like I said, I've been taking a couple of maps that I had previously built, and I've been kind of moving them around, trying to find the right backdrop, and in a lot of places, worrying about what's out windows. I mean, before in a lot of these maps, I had put up like yellow fog, because these maps are supposed to take place in a gas giant, and so when you look out the window, you just see yellow. And I kind of this eats up a lot of objects that I'd rather not have to use, and B, I kind of wanted to be able to do better. And so, like in one of these shots, you can see out the window and see the starship that you're on, and the nacelles through the window and stuff. And in that case, it was a matter of I couldn't make it work well while it was on an interior map, but I could if I moved it over to a outdoor map. And in some other cases, it was vice versa. It was better as an interior map, and I could get the effect I wanted. And it was just a matter of getting that. I've also been working on my asteroid base, the one that has stymied me for so long, and I'm starting to actually make some progress. I'm kind of starting to flush out some key locations. I also came up with a new alien race, which I will kind of get hinted at, but I don't think is going to like have any sort of presence. Just kind of filling in a bit of hinting at a bit of the deeper story.
I'm definitely all for more original alien races.
Yeah, and that's a pretty
Foundry.
cool looking one.
Yeah. So yeah, it's the
So tell us, what parts did you use?
it's the Voth bottom, the armor bottom, and then I used one of my bugged NPC characters that has all the access to all the options, and so I actually kind of combined the chest piece from an Orion and a few accessories from Nausicaans with a Saurian head and added on some antlers.
Well,
It's kind of like a cross between a Cation and a Voth.
Well,
Or a
yeah,
Frossen and a Voth.
yeah, and I gave him a Frost and Tail, so just to break it up.
I
think
really
so-
like that guy.
I think someone said he looks like Darth Maul from the Clone Wars.
A little bit.
They're kind of right. I mean, I had seen Clone Wars, and so I can't deny that maybe it was a subconscious influencer.
All right. Duncan, what have you been working on?
I've been continuing work on my next Starfleet security mission, the one that takes place on Ferenginar. A little bit of building, not ready to show anything for that, and I'm probably going to get really close to release by the time I'm done these last couple maps. But just structuring things, structuring objectives, starting to work with more combat, and doing a lot of dialogue writing. So a lot of the side dialogue, main mission dialogue, that's all going in now. So I finally started writing for the villain on this one, even though I'm getting close to done. So it's just like, wait a minute, this isn't how it should go. But altogether, it's working pretty good on that.
So I know that you're in real life taking a creative writing course right now.
Mm-hmm.
What? How are you approaching your villain?
So for the
writing for the bad guy.
Writing for the bad guy right now is just sort of, I'm trying to find actor in that much. That's kind of the weird thing with this one, where he doesn't, for me right now, like I'm trying to get him to have a little bit more of a presence. So he's a little bit more aristocratic than previous villains, more dismissive, and sort of more politically savvy. So someone who isn't necessarily just raving lunatic, quoting poetry at you, or just completely insane. Just trying to create more of this, more texture to him. But what's coming in from the Radon class is a lot more of the sort of the plot and making it feel dynamic and making sure that the characters, this is one really big piece of advice I probably have to give, make sure that they want something in the mission and that there's some type of conflict. Just doesn't matter what it is. But it's just like there's a reason for them to kind of keep going. Someone who's completely satisfied and just going on a whim, it's kind of hard to write for that in order to make it compelling. But if you have some type of unreconciled desire, then that can really, it's very vague, but that can really work in and make a... hold on, I'm just still getting a lot of feedback here. But it can really improve the sort of overall feeling of the piece, make it feel a lot more sort of compelling.
Well, what brought it to my mind was I was watching the latest episode of The Flash today, and at one point the villain is, yelling at the Flash, "Who's the villain now, Flash?" And it was a great sort of over-the-top scenery-chewing moment, and there's certainly a time and a place for that.
Yeah, definitely use it in moderation. Mm-hmm. And use it where that type of reaction is just going to play to character, not just the desire to have this particular scene. So definitely also focus on that sort of consistency of the characters too, and make sure that it makes sense for this particular person to be behaving in this way, not just because it'd make a great story, but it makes sense for this villain given their backstory that works for them. So definitely think about them as authentic characters, because that can really help inform the type of story that develops from that. Because you can just start with just writing details about a character, and then what might they be interested in? What might their challenges be? And that could really even just create an entire story right there.
Well, one good piece of advice for everybody is to kind of sit down and think about your villain before you start writing, and think about their character and what they want, and then figure out from there what they are going to sound like.
Or what I've kind of done is the exact opposite, which is I kind of worked out how he sounds like, and I kind of know what he's doing in the plot and just sort of his backstory, but the personality is just like, let's just work it out as we go. So I'm doing what you shouldn't do.
Well, one thing that I've noticed is that if you start by figuring out what the character wants, the next step is to figure out how they're planning to get that, and then that kind of defines their personality for you.
it definitely is all sort of interconnected with any character, really, as what they want, what their personality is, what they're going to sound like in dialogue. And for villains, it's very important, and so that you get the right feel, whether you want people to hate them, whether you want people to feel sorry for them, whether you want people to have a mixture of both. The sympathetic villain is always a good one, rather than somebody who's just unrepentantly evil. But there's time for that too. So anyway, Mark, what have you been working on?
I've not really gotten anything done. Just one of those things I'm just trying to just every now and then I ponder things I want to do, even though I haven't really taken the time to actually work on anything.
All right. How about our guest, Pax? What have you been working on?
Well, for starters, last week I published a one-map teaser preview mission for my upcoming Foundry project, the Hundredth, which is the Dominion and Delta Quadrant story, and it's in preview mode right now. So if you want to check it out, you have to enable reviewing and look for it there. And I've also made a little promotional poster for it, which I've just posted the link to in Twitch chat. And as for the mission itself, I'm kind of in the middle of rewriting that story, and it's probably going to be a few more months before that mission is actually the full mission is actually ready to be playing. I have it targeted for maybe a January release date at this point. And other than that, as I mentioned in chat before the show, in game, I'm kind of scrambling to get all my tunes caught up on the storyline. I got 2 left to go, and also sort of alongside the game, since I was last on here, I've started up a new blog related to Stowe and Star Trek discussion in general. It's called The Federation's Peace, which is what Pax Federatica translates to in Latin. And it covers general Star Trek and Stowe discussion, and it's got some lore entries in it too. And I'm also discussing the other project that I'm taking on right now, which is a TOS rewatch that I began last month in connection to the 50th anniversary month of the original series. And I'm about halfway through season 1 right now on that.
I've been meaning to do that sometime as well, because my knowledge of the original series episode by episode is not what it could be, because I've only seen the vast majority of them once. And a few favorites which I watch over and over.
I have a few episodes on DVD, but most episodes it's been years.
Yeah.
I can honestly say that I'm really more familiar with the animated series because I have the entirety of that on DVD. I'm actually not sure if whether or not I've seen all of the episodes of the original series. I think I have, but it's hard to be sure when you can't actually remember what all of them are.
Funny you mentioned the animated series, because that's coming out on Blu-ray next month, and I'm planning on eventually getting that and doing a full watch of that too, and I'll probably blog about that too. And then next year, of course, is Next Generation's 30th anniversary, and I'll probably do a full rewatch of that. That'll probably take all year. And then the year after that is Deep Space Nine's 25th anniversary. So there's another rewatch possibly.
You have no shortage of blog topics, that's for sure.
Nope.
All right. Let's see. We've got some mission reviews tonight. So, Duncan, why don't you start us off?
So, as mentioned on the last regular show, I played the Treasure of the Pirate Picard by Huariant, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So, the mission itself is another one of the mirror universe I don't want to call it necessarily an anthology at this point, but a lot of different authors have made some type of attempt at creating a mirror universe separate from the sort of in terms of there's the factions and organizations covered, a little separate from what Cryptic has done, because Cryptic is just focused right now recently on Lita, so there's been a lot of room for people to fill in other blanks. The blank this author has filled is the TNG crew from the Mirror Universe's point of view. So the sort of the gist of the story is that you have been contacted by underlings of Lord Riker, after first engaging in a little bit of just light combat associated with some other mundane activity. And they basically tell you that the Dread Pirate Picard's old ship has been recently discovered. Definitely playing off the Stargazer, discovering that. But the whole idea is that it's got magical technology on that. We want to capture that, and we want to secure it, but we've got a problem. The Orions, I think it was the Orions, they want to capture the vessel too, so we got to get to it first. So you're given this introduction by a couple of characters, an android, which is a mirror universe version of one of this author's characters, and then a captain who's operating under Lord Riker. So they give you the backstory, the mission details, and then you're off. One of my favorite parts of the mission is when you're off, you're invited to ask questions. And this is, I think, the shining moment of it, where you're able to ask questions about the backstory of Dread Pirate Picard, which is his famed pirate history, including his sack of New Kinnemer. In the Mirror Universe, this Dread Pirate Picard is the one who, getting a lot of feedback now, who killed Worf's parents and created a vendetta. So it's just this wonderful attempt where Picard is basically a swashbuckling lunatic going everywhere and destroying everything. So he attacks Vulcan, ends up in a mind meld duel with Sarek and kills him through the mind meld. There's just so much there. So it's just this wonderful parody. It's presented through this, ask questions. You just want to go through everything on that one.
Well, honestly, though, I think that the TNG era mirror universe is probably the most fertile ground you could do with the mirror stuff, simply because of the fact that in DS9 we found out that there were like huge things that changed between TOS and DS9, but we didn't see any of them, and most of them were only vaguely described at best.
And it's very rich ground for parody, so it's almost like it's almost, I don't want to say Family Guy-esque, but it's really a character. It's just something that you would almost want to see Patrick Stewart do, just being this maniacal pirate attacking parts.
For the mirror universe, though, I mean, mustache twirling villains are the norm. You don't need to have it be a parody style in order to have mustache twirling villains.
But it's funnier as a parody style, though, because he killed Worf's parents. So anyway, when you were describing that, I was hoping you were going to say that he sacked Ferenginar. He didn't sack Ferenginar, but he sacked Vulcan. He sacked New Kinnemer. There was a couple of other attacks in there as well. But it's good stuff. So eventually, you get to the right system. You fight off. You fight off pirate raiders. You get to the ship, and then you board the ship. So the rest of the mission is just sort of going through this vessel, and there's a few other parody moments as well. There's a parody of the EMH, emergency military hologram, which is based on Zimmerman. So there's a good parody story of him as well, with an explanation of why it doesn't look anything like the Holodoctor. But of course, we have to work with the Foundry EULA, and the mission certainly does that.
Well, Zimmerman didn't make all of his holographic doctors look like himself.
But just the one. But at the same time, this is sort of meant to be sort of in your mind's eye. It could be Robert Picardo playing this character. So it's one of those ones where it's, again, trying to reference a particular character and needing to explain why, well, specifically to link this with the EMH. So you get that little bit of parody that this is what we're going after. rather than it just being a generic EMH, which we're more familiar with in Star Trek Online. So as you go through the mission, you finally find sort of what the ship is about, what's going on here. And I definitely don't want to spoil it, but there are some moral choices, which are actually really interesting in the sense of like, oh, it's kind of ambiguous and the mission will go on, but this actually matters to how I feel about these characters. So, and that's done through some dialogue prompts that will have two choices or two parts of the map that will, you can just open up an interact, that opens up an interact option. You choose one of the two and it'll open half. There's a doorway up ahead in these two sections, but they'll remove half the just doorway so you can get by. So those two options will say, one will open the left side, one will open the right side, but it'll allow progression onto your objective. So it's a really great way of showing how you have this dual moral choice in a Foundry mission. So ultimately, you find out what's going on the ship. You find out why people want to secure it, and then you have a battle with someone I won't spoil, and find out that not everything is as it seemed when you're first set up for the mission. So again, don't want to spoil, but I guess for the overall impression on the mission, it was funny. I really liked the style. I just think when you got to the ship, it sort of lost a little bit of steam. So it started meandering about a little bit, and some of the build, like the builds will all use the custom ground maps with enough to sort of make them differentiated. But you don't. The one thing this mission lacked was the full. I don't want to invoke me, so I'm just going to invoke the master. Johnny Snowball type custom ground build temp, but that's perfectly fine. It did not matter one bit. It's just a stylistic thing to note. And I guess the combat was really well balanced too. That was one other note for that one. So it's there. It's not oppressive. It sort of moves the story along in certain places. I guess there's only one thing, is just that the Deferi are involved, not as any sort of major plot element, but they're also on the ship. And that was a little hard to there's an explanation for why they're there, but besides allowing for a particular response, it didn't necessarily add much. But overall, it was a really good mission. One of those just sort of it's funny to see this in the Foundry, and it's probably one of the, it's a good concept for the Foundry too. And it sort of gets me interested in, maybe the authors who are building these Mirror Universe episodes maybe get a little bit together and just coordinate some sort of major anthology series, or sort of retrofit an anthology series based on what people have made. Because I know Pax has done Mirrorball, Sutherland has done his Mirror War series, and then Huariant's done this, and I think there's got to be at least half a dozen more in total that have worked on this type of thing. So yeah, it really opens things up, and it really complements even where the game is now, since this mission came out a while ago. Now,
I did my own Mirror Universe mission. Mine was not a parody in any way.
Talking about your Mirror Romulus mission?
My what?
Are you talking about your Mirror Romulus mission?
No, actually, okay, so I've done 2 Mirror Universe missions. I forgot about that.
I'd say the Mirror Universe, the Mirror Romulan is still kind of parody, because he did blow up Romulus again. It's kind of a joke.
It's a little bit of a joke, yes.
A little bit of a joke.
The idea that Romulus must always blow up. It's a universal constant.
I remember playing someone's Mirror mission where they actually had the Mirror Universe Cardassians in the mission a lot.
Well, I had in my original one, because they are, of course, the Klingon Cardassian alliance. I have as still being around.
Mm-hmm.
Even in 24/9. Although I can't remember if any of the cryptic Mirror Universe missions, even the ones that are gone now, if they ever reference the alliance.
Not that I can recall.
Yeah.
I think that they mention it vaguely, really, really vaguely, as an enemy that Lita defeated or something like that.
My explanation was that during the history of the Mirror Universe, the Alliance rose to power, defeated the old Empire, the Resistance arose, and basically formed into a cohesive force and pushed the Alliance out of the areas that used to belong to the Empire, so Earthfall, and plus what we think of as the Federation in our side of the universe. And but the Alliance is still there. It's still an antagonist.
Yeah, the Alliance, I think, did come up in one of those Foundry missions, because not Foundry missions, old Cryptic missions. Because I remember us fighting alongside a mirror version of, what was it, Bavant? At the start, at one point during one of these missions. Old ones, yeah. So they're still around, but definitely not the same power that they were before.
Maybe on the level of the True Way or something.
Mm-hmm.
We should point out that this is an old since Redcon mission.
It's removed, so we can do anything we want. Actually, we could always do anything we want. Because you do not have to follow Stowe law, that's for sure.
Well, see, I only treat the obsolete missions as apocryphal if the new version directly changes the aspect of it. I mean, like, for example, that mission where you have the Hirogen ambush your ship and try to play Hunger Games with you. I mean, nothing in the new version of the Romulan story arc contradicts it. It just leaves it out.
Yeah. And that's funny, because I was actually a long time ago going to try and make a sort of alternate player character story for players that wanted to RP their characters as Hirogen. And part of it was going to involve, tell the story of how you got from the Delta Quadrant to the Alpha Quadrant, or the Beta. And part of it was going to be that at a certain point you were going to encounter Sela, and she was going to employ you. All of that based on the Stowe missions and stuff back from the Path to 2409. But those Stowe missions are not there anymore. So there are no Hirogen in the Beta Quadrant in Stowe at the moment.
On New Romulus there are. There's still that. There's still that.
There's still those guys that randomly appear, yeah.
There's also that one little side where you are told that the Tal Shiar is employing the Hirogen.
Is there? Where?
Yeah.
Where's that?
It's one of the ones that opens up
wait,
the reputation. It's in the mountains.
Yeah.
There's still one of the Romulan storyline missions, one of the very early ones.
Yeah.
Well, like the price of neutrality or something like that.
The cutscene in that one mission is actually very blatant about how the Tal Shiar are working with the Hirogen, because you have this big Hirogen guy rather angrily talking to one of the Tal Shiar about how he had been promised glorious hunting opportunities, and that the only thing he'd seen so far was unworthy of being called a real challenge.
And that was going to be part of my storyline too, is that, Sela was going to make all these grandiose, promises of the great prey, and then she was going to shove you into some almost uninhabited sector where you couldn't do anything, and then you were going to rebel, and that's how your player character ends up working for the either the Klingons or the Federation or the Romulan Republic. But anyway, Pax, you also have a review for us tonight.
Yes, I do, and it's actually one that's been covered in Roundtable before, but I have a somewhat different take on it, and it's the same issue that's kind of influenced my rewriting of the Hundredth. The mission then being reviewed is Better to Have Loved and Lost by Cecil 0812. I chose this mission in part because it's located in the Delta Quadrant, and it's good to give some exposure to those since they're still so rare. But after playing it, it occurred to me that it's kind of, ironically, it kind of demonstrates one possible reason why authors might be so slow to colonize Delta Quadrant, if you will, in the first place. To recap the mission, in case you've forgotten, it's a sequel to the Borg Battlefield Patrol from the cryptic Delta Rising patrol bundle mission, Friends in Unlikely Places. The story's premise is that after that mission, a Romulan Republic vessel did a follow-up survey of the region, and now its commander is calling upon the player to help investigate something that they found. Strangely, the commander is neither Romulan nor Reman, but Vulcan, and the ship also has a Klingon doctor, and no story explanation is given for either of those. Also, players should be advised that the commander is written as having a past relationship with the player's character. Depending on your dialogue choices, it could either be a close friendship or a romance. The Borg debris field, the map is pretty well put together. It's a reasonable facsimile of one of the debris fields from the patrol mission, and it includes a mostly intact, although barely operational Borg cube. Initial scans suggest that an away team can be sent over to the cube safely. Naturally, however, things don't quite work out that way. But anyway, at that point, not to spoil too much, but it takes on a fairly straightforward Borg assimilation plot, with the player trying to prevent him or herself and the away team of the ship from being assimilated. And herein lies what I was mentioning earlier. It occurred to me that a Borg-centric mission like this one, that has no other established Delta Quadrant races or characters or story threads, other than the patrol mission that I mentioned, which is really just a little more than a jumping off point. A mission like this could just as easily have been set in Beta Quadrant, where the bulk of the player base is at any given time, and which would probably be more convenient for most players, especially those who get their Foundry missions the old-fashioned way via the search mechanism. Putting its door in Beta would be more convenient there because it would require less travel time and one fewer map transition than making the player schlep themselves all the way out to Delta. And also, even players that are already in Delta who find the mission via the top 3, if they're expecting going in expecting it to be in the same vein as the Delta Rising story content, they might be in for a bit of a letdown. So I guess the upshot of all this is that unless your mission features elements that are specific to either the Star Trek Voyager TV series or the Stowe Delta Rising mission arc, at this point there's really not much of a compelling reason to put your door in Delta Quadrant. So in a way, this kind of makes this mission, I guess you could call it an exception that proves the rule. And it also occurred to me that it's sort of the opposite of Markhawkman's Ocampa New Year mission, which is, it does feature Delta Quadrant species and locales, but its door's in Beta Quadrant.
Well, see, there's a specific reason why I did that, though. Is because mine, you go to the Ocampan homeworld, which is not available in the Delta Quadrant map.
Yeah, it doesn't go that far.
No. Wouldn't it still make more sense to put the door like somewhere up in, say, the Celeron sector, and then have the player go from there, at least story-wise?
Well, as a plot element, I decided to have you transwarp to it, and honestly, nowhere in the actual part that we have is close enough to actually be a reasonable facsimile.
A compromise could have been the still on a gateway that you use to get to the Delta Quadrant.
Okay, that's actually a pretty good idea now that I think about it, yeah.
And it's a Foundry door, and there's only one mission there.
I realize
That's a little bit surprising.
Yeah, I've been thinking about maybe putting something in there, just like, I don't really have a plot line, but again, it's a good location. So it's like, jump on it? No, I've got other plots.
Taking the cynical route of going for something that will guarantee to get you plays.
But anyway, as I was mentioning, what I mentioned also kind of influenced how I'm rewriting my new mission. Because the way I had originally written the Hundredth, it heavily involved an original alien race. But now this one, now my rewrite, I'm planning to give more heavy emphasis on established Delta Quadrant characters and races, in addition to, of course, the Dominion.
I got disconnected a few minutes ago, so are you wrapping up your review here?
Yeah.
Okay. So because I missed some of what you said. So, all right. So let's move it on to discussion topics. We came up with a couple. Mark had one he wanted to talk about, so take it away, Mark.
Well, I saw this commercial, which, I had to watch the commercial something like a dozen times before I actually understood what it was. See, it was this commercial for business cards, but, they show this woman doing stuff in her office 3 or 4 times in different outfits. They don't really say anything about what she's doing. They're talking about their company. And, I kind of got baffled as to why they show her wearing 3 different outfits. And then eventually it occurred to me that their reason for this was they were trying to simulate the passage of time in a 10-second time slot. So each of the different costumes was supposed to be them showing her doing work in her office on different days. Which, after I figured that out, I mean, it's actually kind of like a rather novel approach to storytelling because, you're not usually going to wear the same thing to work every single day.
And you had tweeted that, so I got to thinking, okay, how do you show passage of time in a Foundry mission if that's something you want to do, and changing outfits on your NPCs? That's an idea. I was remembering very specifically a mission of, I believe it was Woody Valleys, where he had a big time jump. It was something like a week or something between maps, where you get to a new map and somebody says, "Oh, that was a long week," and it's like, okay, yeah, showing a time jump in a Foundry mission is a difficult thing to do. So how can you reinforce that? And having people change their clothes, I think that's a good way to do it, in addition to something like dialogue.
Giant temporal portal is what I can also recommend.
Captain, look at the stars. We've traveled a week forward in time.
Well, I wasn't thinking going just that soon, but yeah, it is a good method, and I actually kind of used it in Gemini a little bit. There's one part where you go from one map to another map, and there is the assumption when I first wrote it that, well, it's going to be a few hours. I didn't actually make a point of it, but I did change one character's clothing to sort of put a little bit more of a sort of like there's something has happened, and it's a really great method. I haven't used it since, but it is something that it's really simple, and it really kind of goes with how people normally go about their day. They don't necessarily just keep changing outfits every hour or so. So when you do that, it's sort of this immediate visual reference.
Mm-hmm. That makes more sense if you're stretching something out over days. So. Mm-hmm. And of course, the challenge to that is, well, this is Star Trek, so lots of people wearing uniforms, and even if they've changed clothes, their uniform is going to look the same.
Not to mention, Cryptic even NPCs tend to always wear the same outfit.
Yeah.
Cooper's wearing the same thing in every scene he's in.
One thing you could do for male characters, at least, is have them grow a beard. That's something.
You can always have somebody remark on it and say, "Oh man, you need to shave."
Yeah, that's actually something that something I read about regarding the Voyager episode Resolutions. That's the one where Janeway and Chakotay are stuck on the planet for a few weeks, and apparently at one point they were considering having Chakotay grow a beard during that time to kind of to again show the passage of time, and for whatever reason they decided against doing that. But that would be another good way. That would be another good way of showing the passage of time.
I was actually watching 30 Days, the Voyager episode, not last night, but the night before. And when Paris is in the brig and they're showing that time has passed, they actually make him a little scruffier, to show that his beard growth. Like apparently he decided not to shave since he's in prison again.
Well, one thing that occurs to me with this is that if you're going to do that, you need to avoid the goatee of evil. Because that just makes them look like a mirror universe version of themselves, and not the. It doesn't really make it look like time has passed. Actually, realistically, it doesn't, because of the fact that a goatee is something that you only get by carefully shaving, and if it's due to time passing and you didn't shave, then it's going to be all over.
Now, one of those things you can play with it a little bit, have somebody remark on it and say, "Nice goatee. Are you evil now or something?" It's like, no, I just haven't been shaving. Or, I just trying something new.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have like a stubble option, which would represent a more accurate amount of growth in a day or so.
No, we actually do. It's an aliens. The Tauren has a scruffy beard, and for some reason that got added on Foundry, not on the holodeck, from the Foundry to alien male characters.
Really?
So you can create a alien facsimile of a human character or whatever alien, and use the scruffy beard option. If it's still there, they haven't taken it away. But
interesting.
You can do that.
One thing that's good to remember is that if you duplicate a costume, you do have the option to change the species of the character without changing any of the rest of the costume. Mm-hmm. This may have certain unexpected side effects. I have on a few occasions had to radically change the actual uniform they're wearing for no obvious reason, but that doesn't normally happen.
We also want to be careful about which species you transfer to, since some do have slider restrictions. So to alien, that's no problem. But to say Pakled or from Pakled, that would be more of an issue.
Yeah, that will erase some of your settings for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a question from the chat room, and actually this is a good way to segue into another topic, because I wanted to talk about ships tonight. Just as sort of an umbrella topic. And so we have a question. When working on missions, do you get to use any new ship that is available in-game, including those that are limited time lockbox drops or low-buy store ships? The answer is yes, sort of.
Mostly.
So we have two ways of using ships in the Foundry. Either we can use the NPCs that are pre-made for us, which is an NPC contact list, or we can create our own ship costumes, which are then added to that NPC list that we can then place on a map, or reskin a combat mob as that custom NPC that we made. So the list of pre-made NPCs includes a lot of the player ships, and includes a lot of things that are not player ships, like say we have a whole bunch of Kobali ships. We have a bunch of the generic ships that are in there as the pre-made NPCs.
Yeah, so some of those are unique things that we cannot make costumes for. I mean, because, we have the Fek'Liri carrier, which is customizable, but it's the only Fek'Liri ship that is customizable.
Yeah. So when you get into that custom ship maker, essentially, then yes, we pretty much have access to. I mean, that's all player ships that go in that list, and we can change the skins on them. We can put the Sagittarius color schemes, that sort of thing, on there.
Spray
swap
paint
out parts
to make them look like mirror universe versions of themselves.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
And that is not comprehensively every playable ship in the game, but it is most of them.
Yeah, a lot of ships, they'll see these occasionally in the patch notes, that they are they do have to be manually added, but there's got to be a weird exception there, because sometimes we'll get a ship that's obviously not ready, that's not in the patch notes, that presumably is just part of this, this data block, and that for some reason included the Foundry, and then we get it. There's even some unreleased ships. There's one Romulan one that's definitely not in the game yet that we got. It's a TOS, an original TOS era Romulan cruiser. We have that in the Foundry. It's not in the game. And it's just so some, like, we'll generally get a lot of ships. Like, we got the Iconian ships. We got the most of the lockbox.
We got the Bodwar ships. We got the Zindi ships. I believe are all in there now.
Recent Federation ships. I think the last official batch of ships was the Dreadnoughts, the flagships.
If I remember right, some of the new TOS themed ships are glitched and don't display or something.
Yeah, and those weren't part of an official release like that you saw in the patch notes. I think those have been some of the things that have been added to the Foundry accidentally.
Yeah, we get some things that are added to the game itself, and they sort of automatically make it into the Foundry character creator, either on space or the ground side.
Yeah, like fur options.
In the case of ships, though, I don't think that's automatic. I think someone, made a duplicate of it to be used as a Foundry asset, and maybe didn't work out right, because...
Well, it's hard to
stuff
say.
That I know,
because we don't see
Zero has been talking about adding a bunch of stuff from Agents of Yesterday to the Foundry. That hasn't happened yet. And we do have a lot of those blank ships that are just sort of not hooked up properly. So and it's also some of the stuff that gets legitimately leaked. We got the Nakul skin before the Nakul were talked about in the game, and that got taken away and hasn't been added since. Mm-hmm. And then we've also got that new Romulan cruiser, Romulan D7, for example, that and is a customizable player ship, and we don't have that, and we don't know how that's going to be added if it ever is.
Another thing that was kind of interesting was that at one point in time we actually had the ability to make custom Suliban. I'm not sure if that was only in Tribble or if that was on Live too, but at one point in time it was actually possible to make custom Suliban.
Yeah, and it's just a lot of stuff gets added to the game, and in sort of big groups, and I think there is some way for stuff to accidentally work its way into the Foundry based on some association. It would definitely take someone from Cryptic to explain what's going on here, because we have no idea of the technical back end.
In the case of the Suliban and Nakul skin options, if I remember right, those both got accidentally added to the list of options for alien characters in general.
Yep, my first mission used it, and then my first mission had to find something else because they took it away and never added it again.
But what I was saying about that, though, is that I think that actually was an option for players at the time.
At that time, yeah, that was also an option. And then, again, it got taken away, and they haven't added it back, no matter how many times I've complained about it.
So one thing that's good to point out here is that we're comfortable discussing this sort of thing, that things that accidentally make their way into the Foundry, because it's not data mining or anything against the terms of service like that. It's just stuff that they didn't really need to get in there. Sometimes gets in there and anybody can see. So yeah.
Like the fur options, those showed up before they announced that we got the Taurans in Agents of Yesterday. All of a sudden, it's just like, hey, we've got lots of fur options. It's like, what? Where's this coming in?
Was it actually even before Agents of Yesterday was announced?
It was. I don't think it was before.
Because we were looking at it and we were like, what the heck is that? Because it looks like something a costume like somebody would make. And then
I knew it.
I remember what you're talking about. The fur vest that the Tarians wear.
They've also got fur arm bits. They've got fur shoes, and oh god, I've got a screenshot.
I think we didn't have really any idea where those could possibly be coming from when they were first added, because it was before Agents Yesterday had even been announced.
It was only like a week before Agents Yesterday was announced. I remember it was then we were like, oh, that's what it's from.
So if you are interested on scooping things that are coming up, occasionally take a stroll through the Foundry costume creator and see what might be there. You never know.
The game has been in there forever. We don't know.
Be nice to Cryptic because it is accidental. They didn't mean for these things to come out before they were ready.
Yeah, there have been a whole lot of things that got messed up when they were originally added to the Foundry and fixed later. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, the obelisk. When it was originally added to the Foundry, the model was not there.
And that's a typical thing that you see. When a ship is first added, it's like the model itself doesn't want to show up, but the little blinky lights do. And then usually later that'll get fixed. But ironically, ships are one of the things that we get most regularly as an update for the Foundry. We get new ships most commonly of all. Like we had the Pioneer class pretty soon. In fact, I think right after Agents of Yesterday dropped.
We also got the Vengeance 2 in there now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so question for you guys. We've gone through all the mechanics of what we have available, and it is quite a lot. We have a lot of options. So when you guys are coming up with a ship for a mission, where do you start in deciding what it's going to be?
Plot.
Yeah,
that's as much as I can say. Plot.
The first thing is, of course, what race is flying the ship.
Naturally, yeah.
I mean, because if it's the Breen, they're not going to use Klingon ships. They're going to use Breen ships, unless you have a major plot reason for why it's a Breen and they're flying something that's not a Breen ship.
I just posted an example of something I've been working on recently. I've posted that in the Skype Twitch feed. Also, an example of the fur, but we don't necessarily need to show that on air.
Already did.
Oh, okay. That's already gone up? Okay. Yay!
I'm loading up your...
So what we're looking at here, when the stream catches up, is a partial part of a Prometheus.
Mm-hmm. Before we get to that, I do have one question. How did you make it so the sleeves are two different colors?
Because the sleeves are actually arm attachment options, not actual sleeves.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So you can color them independently. Yeah.
So this is one of the things that we have in the Foundry as an independent customization item, not that we don't have in the game. This is just one of the vector modules of the Prometheus class. You can create that as an independent asset because they've included like saucer separation modules, the star drive sections and stuff like that. And what I've set this up as is a drone ship based on the Prometheus program that is unmanned Federation starship. And that's going to be featuring in a later SSF mission.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the fun things that you can do with the Starship Costume Creator in the Foundry that you can't do in a game is you can use pieces of ships. Like I did my mission Sink the Bismarck, where you're going after a rogue AI-controlled Odyssey class. So it's at one point when the Odyssey AI is getting a little bit desperate, it sends the saucer section after you. Just the saucer section.
I can think of one exception to that. In the live game, you can fly either the top or the bottom half of the Kara.
True. Yeah. And we do have all the customization options for that one.
But of course, that's a special case because when the devs designed that thing, they basically, took it as a way to make 3 ships with only 2 ship models.
One of the interesting ones that I ran across is all the variations of the Ilachi Dreadnought.
Yeah, that guy.
Because some of those use like the Shishar. You use like the bottom portion of it, and it doesn't really look like anything recognizable. And so you could make it to be a alien ship for your new custom alien race.
Yep,
we're pretty limited for non-canon races that you come up with trying to find ships for them. We're a little bit limited in that respect.
That's a good segue because I did include an example of me trying to create a or an original alien ship out of something that we have in the game.
You know, there's something I did a long time ago in my mission diplomacy in the Gamma Quadrant. In that one, the actual bad guys in the mission are a race called the Rekarthur, which are, some Gamma Quadrant civilization that the Dominion hasn't finished exterminating yet.
What?
What?
I was just going to point out real quick in the Twitch stream right now, we've got what I was working on. That was a D4X Kelvin warbird that I repainted and to the best extent possible to look like something else, and that is a miscellaneous alien space pirate vessel.
Cool.
I should point out that we've got a nice selection of generic starships, and those are usually my go-to for generic alien races.
Yep.
I love the generic battleship. I call it the Hammerhead.
I like some of the generic escorts. Can't quite figure out a way to describe them. They're sort of wider than they are long, almost not quite warbird-like.
Another one that I really like are the dumbbell-shaped science ships.
Yeah. I like the really big battleship that's sort of more vertical. It's almost like a flying building.
I think that's actually a dreadnought.
Looks like one of those.
That's the one I call the Hammerhead, because it kind of looks like looks like the back end of a hammer.
Something like that, yeah.
Kind of reminds me of one of those cruisers from Firefly.
I was just gonna say it.
Yeah, one of the Alliance cruisers.
Anyway,
I can find what the actual name of it is here.
For the Rekarthur, what I did was I took the I think it's the 28th Century Federation ships, the Aeon and the Wells class. I painted them black and gave them red glows for their colors, and used those as alien ships. Which I have to say, changing the colors like that makes them look really different.
Yeah, I know Sutherland has a really great knack for finding that exact combination of skin and texture, coloration and texture option for the hull to really make ships feel very different from what they were in the original game. So there's a lot of creativity that you can have in just playing around with things, because that's a lot of what the TV show used to do too. Just they had their generic ship models and they reconfigured them, repainted them for the various aliens of the week.
Like there's this one ship that showed up in TNG as a Trill ship. Then it later shows up as an... Actually, wait, no, it showed up as an Akamarian ship before it showed up as a Trill ship. And it is actually also the Talarian ship, except that the Talarian ship had fins added to it. And some other race that used it too, and I don't remember exactly.
One of these ships that you're referring to is actually, we have that available. It's the generic frigate. And I believe it is used in-game as the ship for the Akamarians in one of the patrols.
Yeah, because the Akamarians use the generic ships. They don't use any ship associated with any actual empire.
Mm-hmm. And they had, it had like a wedge-shaped primary hull and then some fins and a little engineering bit.
Yeah. See, because actually, believe it or not, I think that the Cryptic designed generic ships, some of them I think were actually inspired by that thing from the show.
They've also got one of the science vessels is also based on the transport the Elorians used in Star Trek Generations.
Will they look cool?
Yep, that's in there.
All right, so let's see. One of the other things that I hit upon as a potential for a custom alien race was the Kobali ships. They're in the NPC contact. Trying to find them here. Yeah, okay, so there's a Kobali cruiser and a Kobali frigate, which are not at all the same as the Samsar cruiser that we have as a playable ship. And I assume these probably appeared in some of the Delta Quadrant patrol missions.
Yep, they did.
But otherwise, they're not prominently featured, and they're sort of different looking, and you could, I think, potentially use them because people won't see them and instantly say, oh, Kobali.
Another stuff to check out on the list is actually some of the props, like sensor drone platforms, or I think it's like we have a Gorn healing platform, something like that. Something that's just a smaller asset that you can then repurpose as a small frigate, small fighter, or a small like defense drone. So there's a little bit of creativity in using things for one purpose, where in the game they're used for a different purpose.
I've done that actually in my mission, Darkness Between the Stars. We have these combat drones that are launched by the derelict ship you're exploring. And what I did for those was I took Fekleri frigates and reskinned them as tricobalt mines.
Yeah. So that can be a really effective method. And yeah, it's just one of the things where you just want to look through that list and also just kind of keep an eye on what might be used for other purposes. Because we do have the ability to mix and match with the type of unit that you're sort of covering up and then the model you're using.
So if you really wanted to have a mission where you kill Neelix, his ship is in the Foundry. Phylaxian Frigate 01. That's Neelix's ship. So, Casmodian, if you're listening, I'm sure you'll be inspired by that.
Yes, but because of the EULA, you won't be able to establish visual communications, which means you won't actually be able to confirm the kill.
What if... Well, you can be belligerent on the comm and just say the visuals are down.
Yes.
But yeah, you won't be able to have...
That is all a ploy. Neelix isn't actually on that ship. It's being operated remotely. See, he's more clever than you think.
Pulling an Izard. But anyway, okay, so moving on from deciding what ship to use, how do you guys go about naming your ships when you're in a Foundry mission?
I take the species name, and then I add escort, battleship, or cruiser.
Honestly, all the time I just don't bother. I mean, because, like for that example with the Wreck Arthur, I think they just ended up with some really, really short generic name. I don't remember what it was.
So you guys ever named your alien ships?
Not with a specific class name. Again, I know Sutherland, the master of ship configurations, he just goes full out on that one. But yeah, I personally haven't yet. Even in my first mission, I basically I stuck an identifying label for the species and added the class name. I have named Federation ships and Klingon and Romulan, but not not a ship class before.
For Federation ships, what I've done in the past is when I've had to come up with a lot of different names, like for a big battle scene, what I've done is go to Wikipedia, where you can find lists of names of actual U.S. and British Royal Navy ships. Borrow some of those names.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Well, let's see. When I was making the final episode of the Purity series, the climax was going to be a big battle, Federation on Federation ships, and I decided I wanted to name every single one of them, even the ones that would only show up if you were in a team of 5 players. And this was a max NPC map. It was going to have all the way up to 25. So that was a lot of names. So I sort of broke each NPC group down into themes. So like for one, I picked my favorite Formula One drivers. For another one, I picked my let's see, some of my ancestors come from Cornwall, so I did cities in Cornwall for one of them. I think I did rivers in Africa for another one, and World War I generals for another one, and it was, on and on and on until I finally had filled them all up. So if you take a team of 5 players into Purity 6, you will see every single one of those ships named.
I now feel the need to find a reason to name a ship Cormoran.
Cormoran!
Well, you remember the significance of the name Cormoran, right?
Let's see, Jack the Giant Killer, Mr. Rift Track Special?
No. World War II ship.
It's also the monster who attacks Cornwall in a Mystery Science Theater. Or a Rift Track Special.
In World War II, the Cormoran was a German mine layer, which, the official class name was Auxiliary Cruiser, but realistically it had feeble weapons and no armor. And it managed to fight to a draw with a British warship. A small one, mind you, but you see where this is going.
Yeah.
It was the subject of a rather extensive historical debate because of the fact that none of the crew of the British ship lived, and no one on the Allies wanted to believe that the Germans had actually managed to sink the thing. So, all these historians trying to debate whether the German account of events was actually true.
Yeah, and there's precedent, of course, for taking ship names from history. Obviously the Enterprise. The Enterprise has a long history as first a British ship and then an American ship. Obviously, in their Enterprises. Actually, I believe there's a new one under construction. I don't think it's launched yet.
It's the next carrier.
Yeah, it's a new carrier class too, as I recall. So, I think some of the other ships we've seen in Star Trek, we've seen the Hood, the Potemkin, the Tiananmen.
Has the Endeavor showed up?
Endeavor.
I've used it before, but
I think possibly we have. And of course, we've had it named after all the shuttles: the Challenger, Columbia,
Discovery.
There you go.
I'm flying the Atlantis right now.
I actually, you probably saw earlier, I don't know if it's up now, but Dragoon and I were showing off our T6 Constitution class ships that we won in game. Dragoon, what did you name yours?
Right now I'm going with the Phoenix. Just because, this is an Agents of Yesterday character, but I kind of wanted to, unlike my other Agents of Yesterday character, I wanted to take the idea that where my other character went full TOS, this one is a modern take on a classic design. So it's kind of a rebirth.
I kind of wanted something significant because, obviously this is the iconic vessel. So I have an ancestor who was at Valley Forge in the Continental Army. So I decided to name the ship the USS Valley Forge and the character after my ancestor. So it's needed something momentous.
I did notice that you did not use the standard TOS era nacelle struts.
Yes, I customized it up a little bit and stuck in, and I put the Constitution refit engineering hull on it as well.
Didn't notice that one, but yeah, I do like both.
Kind
of
a
guys.
nice combination so far.
Yeah, I do like what you guys did with those. Because
if they ever get or let, I should say, Thomas the Cat loose on the Constitution refit, which is not a very good model. It dates all the way back to launch, and could use some. So if they ever do that, I will go full Constitution refit because I've loved that design forever now.
Oh yeah.
Well, getting back to names, just a little quick. Another thing I just remembered. In Mirror Ball, I also had to make a ton of ships. Make a number of names for mirror ships, and for those, I named them after various literary villains and literary
Nice.
not just from not just literary but also from other pop culture. Like I have the ISS Voldemort, the ISS Blofeld.
Oh yeah.
I think one's called the ISS. I think if for multiple player games, once you start getting into 2 or more player games and you start having more ships, I think you unlock stuff like the ISS Panem, the Hunger Games reference. And a ton more after that.
I guess
Yeah,
the
references and inside jokes are always good for ship names.
Let's see, the last one that last source I've gone through is sci-fi authors. So I've had the USS Asimov showed up, and I'm not sure if I made the Niven ended up in a mission. I know I had one at some point in development that had the USS Niven, but I think they got taken out. So I've done those 2. I haven't done a Herbert yet, but we're getting to it.
Oh, Wells.
Not a Wells, no, because that's kind of a ship.
Already, a little bit already taken.
Well, it's taken in the future.
It's a class in the future, but that doesn't mean it was the original Wells.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because how do we know that it's not actually like the Wells K or something like that?
Because we had the Intrepid in TOS, and then the Intrepid class later on.
Or the Defiant.
Defiant.
The typical convention in Starfleet seems to be, the prototype of a vessel ends up being the name of the class from then on.
Yeah, but
There are apparently exceptions to this, mind you, but
Because the Defiant was a prototype, and then we all started calling it the Defiant class afterwards. You can assume that the Enterprise E was not the first Sovereign class. The USS Sovereign would be. Things like that.
well, the Excelsior was another example.
Although there does also seem to be some cases where they've decided to change the name of the prototype ship after it was commissioned.
So I'm looking at one of my very, very early missions, in which I had a bunch of particular ships, Federation ships show up. And let's see, what did I name them? Okay, so I named one the Roanoke after a vessel that shows up in an episode of Babylon 5. Probably the best episode of Babylon 5, in
It
fact.
was named after the Roanoke colony.
Well,
Virginia, yeah.
Roanoke Colony was actually named after the island Roanoke, so it goes even farther than that.
This is a multitude of references. And let's see, there's another one named the McNamara, which I named after, I think it was Kennedy's Secretary of Defense, if I recall correctly. There's the Mombasa, which is a Halo reference.
Yay!
I knew you'd like that one. Let's see, there's the USS Dallas, which is from, of course, a reference for Hunt for Red October.
Oh, you mean it's not a reference to Corbin Dallas?
And let's see. There's 2 more. There's the USS Basilone, because I had just seen the miniseries The Pacific at the time. He's a real person depicted in that series, of course. And the other one was the USS Granger, because I'm a huge Harry Potter fan.
Wow, there's a Pioneer sitting over here.
Of course, I'd be remiss not to point out that my flagship's name, and this ship, of course, appears in a couple of my missions too, is a play on Pax Britannica, which itself was a variation on the Pax Romana, the Roman peace.
And I'm now rolling up in the USS End of Eternity, which is actually the title of a Isaac Asimov book.
So, really, I mean, you can pull ship names from just about anywhere. Let's see, there's the USS Orca is in here. Probably not one of our people in this particular context, because, of course, we are sitting in Battle Group Omega, which is soon to be going away, in fact. It's already lost its transwarp conduit.
Actually, the Orca, that name, it's in the random name generator. So it's entirely possible that the ship came with that name and they just didn't bother to change it. Because I know I've had at least one ship randomly get named Orca.
Yeah, I think
When I'm leveling, I don't tend to rename my ships. I just use whatever the generic one spit out. So sometimes it gets them pretty funny. Except for, let's see, I think my Vaudouar cruiser I left because it was just so hilarious. The random name generator named it Florence.
I had one of my
keeping
Vaudouar cruisers get named Patriot. I think that's the right one. So something like that.
I do have one ship that Dragoon will probably appreciate. It's a Andorian escort called the USS Imola.
Actually, my speaking of that, I made 4 Agents of Yesterday characters to fly the 4 new T6 capable TOS designs, and they're all named after famous Formula One tracks, and the registry numbers are the years of famous races. So if anyone knows Formula One history, one of them is named the USS Suzuka, and it's NCC 1990, which is the year that Ayrton Senna arguably took out intentionally his main rival to win the World Drivers' Championship. So, yeah, you got to find some sort of naming convention for these things and go with it. Whether it's in the regular game or in the Foundry.
Monty Python characters, for example.
There you go.
I have been able to name ships after comic book and cartoon characters. I mean, because I have one character who names her ships after references to the supervillain organization Advanced Idea Mechanics. I have another one who names her ships after reptiles and Spider-Man villains. A mixture of the two.
Well, in game, one of my ships in game, which is actually in dry dock now, is a Mobius destroyer, and I call it the USS Bhagavan, which is a reference to the Bhagavan Gita, which contains the famous line, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
That works.
I do have to list out one more. This is actually not mine. This was a friend of mine who got into Stowe. He kind of didn't necessarily, keep to a he was going for funny value here with this one, but his major ship was the USS Picard flute. Just completely off the wall. He was. What was this? This was a. It was a T5U Prometheus class, but it was the USS Picard flute.
So, there's an urban legend that somewhere in one of my missions is the secret identity of Dragoon.
So some say.
Some say.
Yes. Some say my real name is in a Foundry mission zone. We won't tell you where. At some point, I'm going to I just as a joke, and you'll get this one, several of you. I named my Klingon character, who's supposed to be a Kelvin universe Klingon, Calgon.
Dun 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 dun.
We need more Calgon.
That kind of amuses me is translating simple phrases into Klingon or Romulan for ship names.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with this, because as a reference to the incredibly horrible film Space Mutiny, I want to find a Klingon translation for Southern Sun, which is the name of the ship in that movie. And so
you mean the redressed Battlestar Galactica?
Yep. I would also see if this works, but Railing Death sounds good in Klingon. One I've got to add here, this is my one Mystery Science Theater reference, a bird of prey way back in the day before Tier 5U, but just a bird of prey that I had set up for my Klingon character, the default one you can pick up from leveling. I named it the USS Rancor. That stuck around for a while.
Two of my Agents of Yesterday characters are a Prime universe and a Kelvin universe version of each other. And I love, universe hopping, so I named her Kelvin Constitution the USS Fringe.
Oh, I think the most obscure one I've done one parody character in all my time, but I did it pretty consistently. I parodied the anime Patlabor, which has some similarities with the SSF series, but by making it basically Star Trek versions of the characters and really taking the piss out of my backstory.
Speaking of references, in the map with us at the moment, we have the USS Event Horizon.
Oh yeah.
From the old 90s horror movie. I think that was 90s. Might have been early 2000s.
Actually,
Or it's Fish Brain.
it was either 90s or late 80s. One of the two. There was another interesting one named the Latinum Prince.
Yeah, I saw that. Latinum Prince. Maybe it's a luxury liner. Masquerading as an intelligence vessel.
Or you can do what some people. I saw one person do with the Kelvin Dreadnought that flew by. Just the USS We Are Borg. I don't understand that one, but I'm probably going to do the same thing as the Picard fleet.
Mm-hmm.
Sure
Something
it's
that's
maybe
USS Chilborg.
if it's funny to you,
That's all that
then go-
matters.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
That's okay. I saw the people.
My character 7 of 13 used to fly a Chelgret named Breen is Futile.
I had the Breen's the Stig's Breen cousin as a bridge officer.
Very nice.
Love it.
Sometimes it's fun just wandering around looking at people's names.
Yeah, and I do still have the emergency
Picard
hollow
just-
strand.
Emergency hollow strand. That's good. My pride and joy is the bridge officer, the Vulcan bridge officer that I unpacked, and she had this name by default. Her name was Tolol, as in T''LOL. I was like, I cannot ever change that.
I
I've
actually
actually
once
seen several duty officers named that.
Yeah.
I was once just. This was actually a little creepy. I was just scrolling through the just random names for my main Fed character because it's not particularly important with what I've got going on right now. Just scrolling through, and my last name popped up, and it's not one that I've ever seen ever referenced ever. It's basically Cryptic looked up a sort of list of miscellaneous, it's last names in the U.S. that have some presence but aren't like terribly common, and that's sort of what populates that list. And it just so happens mine is on that. It just kind of creepy. It's like, guys, come here. I didn't do this. I'm scared. Of course, it did take me a lot of permutations to get to that point, but it was still like that scary moment of like, holy crap.
It's like clicking buttons and then suddenly you see something pop up and it's like, wait a second. Things man is not meant to know.
Like your
Searching
computer
yourself
randomly
on
telling
Google.
you. Or just your computer just randomly saying, hey, I like the shirt you're wearing. Like, do you know me? Can you see what I'm doing?
Have you hacked into my webcam?
I don't have a webcam. How are you looking at this?
Crypt is inside the house.
I think that
It's October. We got to go through some more cliches.
like I say, I think we've dug this tangent as deep as it'll go.
Yes, we have.
I was just going to say,
randomly talking ship names.
Yeah, somehow this relates back to ship names.
Yep.
Actually,
speaking of Zeronius Rex, she appears to be having a pretty awesome vacation in Europe. So good for you.
I should probably bring up a topic that came up with Admiral Aaron and Zeronimus Rex and me on Twitter. We have decided, at least me and Admiral Aaron, that a new recurring theme of every Foundry mission has to be the use of the Zero NPC. Because I've started to make it a thing. Aaron said he's totally going to make it a thing, but I've already got 3 or 4.
Crowd scenes, or anytime you need background actors.
She's the bartender on Ferenginar, and she's also visiting the station as the High Regent of Zero on Epoch. She's in Apex as the pink-haired visitor.
I think we should also endeavor to use as much as possible Perry Jim Cardassian. When I made my Starbase 1 memorial, I have him there labeled as celebrity guest.
Well, I've used Zero in my last couple of missions, and one of those also included Mirror Zero.
Oh yeah, that one. That was that was a pretty good one.
She put these fun NPCs in there for us. We must use them as much as possible.
I'm still I've been doing a lot of Admiral Quinn jokes, but I still have to find a way of using the mirror Admiral Quinn at some point. So it's like, need just a good joke.
Oh, actually, the reason I originally thought of that thing with that commercial we talked about earlier was actually as a way of looking at a work and figuring out what design strategy that the person had in mind when they created it. Which is where one thing I was thinking about with the ship names is that sometimes it's actually kind of funny if you see a naming convention and you're like, so that's why he did that.
And a lot of times it's very simple answers as to why they have done that.
Especially with me.
See, you have the USS Atlantis with you today. Are you a Stargate fan by any chance?
Actually more so of Atlantis, but this was actually for me, I had this as the USS Discovery, and then they added a TV show, and now I'm having to do something else. So I just moved between space shuttle names.
Well, that Discovery existed, 150 years before this one, so it could be this Discovery.
But the Discovery A.
Well, I have actually since also made that into a Foundry ship. So yeah, I've already got the Discovery as the it's actually a Nebula class that shows up in a couple AEI missions. And actually, one of the characters from Starfleet Security is the captain of that one. I haven't figured out what to do with her yet, but I made that character change. It's like, oh,
I actually tend to have.
One thing I feel the need to point out is that the USS Discovery that they have in the new TV show, we don't have anything in the Foundry that's actually really a good match for that at all.
Oddly, this is the ship I've got now. It kind of, this was a little creepy, but it was I'd say this is probably as close as you can get right now with Foundry ship parts, because you get a bit of the delta with the nacelle the strut configuration. You got that small little circular head, and then you've got some type of star drive section down below. So if someone really wants to do that, I was just making jokes that I'm going to totally make this a thing, and then I was like, nah. But this could be a 2409 Discovery analog until we get something more official.
Which I bet we will at some point.
Yeah, so we're probably going to get that classic version, maybe an updated version.
You mean the Atlantis that you're flying right now, or
so you got that circular hull, and then the struts I'm using has a little bit of a delta configuration.
Yeah.
You've got the nacelles who are kind of, you got a little bit of that forward configuration. There's a lot of back to them as well, so it's not perfect. And then it does have a star drive section. Again, totally different configuration.
One thing that it really needs is if you could cut off that weird looking tail.
I can't do that, unfortunately. The tail is kind of stuck there, and I actually do like that for itself a little bit more than just trying to go for the perfectly faithful. I think you can do one that's shorter, but then I think the star drive section becomes a lot more bloated.
And even then, it's only shorter.
shorts are not off. But if you can actually get rid of that, then you've got something that's actually really close. In terms of something that's in the 2409 vein of a ship that's shown in pre-TOS.
The unfortunate thing is that we'll probably have to wait longer now until we get anything Discovery related in game, because of course they delayed the premiere of the show until May. So it'll be a while before we see anything Discovery. In fact, I'd say probably we have a better chance of seeing something from Beyond first before we see anything from Discovery.
Oh yeah.
T6
Beyond
Franklin.
T6 Franklin. There you go. Drone ships.
Something
Well,
that actually
absolutely.
manages to become more ridiculous than a T6NX.
The Enterprise A version.
Yeah, it's going to suggest that one.
What I'd love is if they released that as a just a nice customization option for existing Kelvin company.
I know what would be the most silly thing that they could possibly put in as a T6 ship that would actually be like a canon thing and not a cryptic creation. That would be a T6 Suliban cell ship.
and just like the one cell too, not like the freighter, which has a whole bunch of them linked together, just the one little cell.
Oh wait, I've actually got one. Well, yeah, logically it's not one better, but I think it's just laughably one better. A Tier 6 Neelix freighter.
Tier 6
It's probably
Cufflink?
more capable.
I don't think we actually have that as a playable ship, though.
No, we don't have the Talaxi.
Not currently playable, but we do have that. The model is in game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the Talaxian ship.
as a ground scale asset that you can stand on when you visit Neelix at that Talaxian asteroid base.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if we had that as a placeable prop in Foundry.
Yeah, it's ground asset. That'd be a good one, because we are, a miscellaneous shuttle definitely would not go awry.
I'm just thinking to myself, how in the world I'm going to document all of this in the show notes.
Sarah was in the attic, and then we talked about ship names, and I'm not sure.
Well, that's part of the challenge for you, Dragoon.
Yeah, I know.
keep
It's
them
my
on
burden to
toes.
bear.
But anyway, we've reached our time limit for the evening, so I think we'll end things here. Dragoon, if you want to put up our contact info.
Okay. We can be reached by email at foundryroundtable@live.com. We are also on Twitter at FoundryRoundtab. Dragoon can be reached at Dragoon1701. Duncan can be reached at GorgonUps_SSF. Mark can be reached at Markhawkman. And I, of course, can be reached at Greendragoon.
And I can be reached at NCC89471, no dash, unlike in game, which has a dash. And also my new blog, which I mentioned earlier, Hex Federatica, one word, .blogspot.com.
And remind us quick what the name of your little preview mission that you have out is.
The 100th. Actually, I think that what I have it now, it's called the 100th, and in parentheses, preview.
And that is in the review tab, so go check it out.
Or at least it was the last time. I think it was Aaron who actually left a review for it. So I don't know if anyone else has done that, but assuming they haven't, it would still be in the review tab.
Probably not something you're necessarily looking for reviews on just yet, right?
No.
But in any case, it's a good teaser that people can go check out. So, all right, that'll be it for us this evening. So we will say goodnight.
Good night.
Night.
Night.